Did y'all see Putin out there begging?
I tried.
Y'all see Putin begging?
Fucking boring, dude. Let me tell you a 30-second history lesson. 8 minutes later. We still doing this?
45 minutes.
Did any of you guys watch the whole thing? I watched the whole thing.
I didn't watch it.
I could not make it.
Listen, he's obviously a shrewd operator and like a masterful at controlling an interview.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to kind of shake him. I thought Tucker asked him some good questions.
And I thought he did a good job trying to steer it.
And he really did.
How is this relevant? And Putin was like, "You're gonna see.
You're gonna see.
Give me 30 minutes."
Exactly.
Anyway, Genghis Khan.
But also he would like. Putin would take shots too. It wasn't like he was ignoring. He would kind of clip him a couple times.
Yeah, he sent some brushback pitches.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, who did the coup d'etat? Like the CIA? Isn't that the 3-letter agency you tried to work for?
Tried to work. He goes, "It's a good thing they didn't accept you."
I was like, damn.
Oh, wow. Yo, it was like
shit in a different language.
He was prepped.
A translator had to tell him, "Yo, you just got roasted."
Yeah.
Just got crushed.
Son, he said it, stared at his face, and then it came in zip-zappy language.
That's bold. Wow. He was also telling jokes too, which I thought was kind of funny.
Son, there was a couple moments. Now, here's the thing, though. Underneath it all, there was some desperation.
I felt
that's what I picked up
Yeah.
on. Why would you do this?
Yes.
He's bragging about like, oh, we have hypersonic technology better than everybody else, and oh, we have the #1 economy in Europe, and all da 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 da. If everything's going so great in your country and geopolitically for you, and the relationships that you've built are just flourishing, you don't do an interview with a incredibly popular American journalist that you know is going to be put on over here. You're doing this, I presume, because you're trying to influence the American public to put Trump back in the election because you think Trump will stop the war. And I mean, Ueda said something interesting. He goes, listen, the war between Russia and Ukraine is in triple overtime. And Russia's supposed to be a superpower, and Ukraine is basically just getting weapons from us.
This should have been mercy ruled.
Exactly. So it's like, why is this in triple overtime?
Yeah.
So I think Putin, if you notice, like he said he hasn't spoken to Biden in a couple of years. It could be that the Americans are just not communicating. He's like, yes, our organizations talk to one another. Okay, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it seemed to me as more of a desperate move.
Yeah.
You want to influence the election. You hope that Trump wins, but if he doesn't, you want to leave that conversation open to potentially ending this conflict. Because he kept saying, we had an agreement. We wanted to stop.
Yeah, we're
peace. Being reasonable people. We want peace. And then he brought up a couple things that I thought were like kind of goofy that he like undermined his whole argument with. Like
what?
Using I mean, Canada's just a bunch of fucking retards for bringing the Ukrainian Nazi in there. But he used it as if it was done on purpose because the guy was a Nazi.
Right.
Yeah.
Like as if he was brought there for his Nazi behavior.
Yeah.
I think it was a miscalculation by a bunch of dumb idiots in office in Canada.
Yeah.
Where they should have looked at the most basic thing, which is like, what side was fighting against Russia during World War II?
Yeah.
Clearly Germany, right? Absolute retards. And the guy is getting up there. The fucking Ukrainian Nazi guy was up there going, thank you, finally, you see what I've been waiting for this moment.
No, we got George Santos, so
we have our line.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, but to me, it just had this like,
There's a wise philosopher once said, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Yeah,
His name is Tom Brady.
Shout out to Tom Brady. For real, and he did a lot of explaining.
He's #2 of all time.
Yeah.
So he goes, this is why Ukraine should actually be, these are Russian people, and there's a Russian soul. There's all this explaining. He's going through the history and all this stuff. He's like, listen, the history of America is that we were part of England. Does that mean that, like, that's his argument, is like, these are ethnically the same people. Yeah, who gives a fuck if you're ethnically the same?
Right,
you go out to the Balkans, outside of the Albanians, they're ethnically all the same people. Does that mean that they should all be the same country? No, they've been fighting to be separate countries for the last few hundred years. So
can Mexico annex like southern Texas or some shit because Mexicans live there?
They're these, he's very educated, and when people are speaking about things that we don't know, we have a tendency to believe them because we can't exactly refute. Right? I can't refute Russian history. I don't really know enough about it. Right? Frankly, I don't. But it did seem that he really desired something. And if things are going so well, your desires from foreign nations are not as high.
Yeah.
as they are if you're doing a Tucker Carlson interview.
No, he's stepping into an information war. Like he's attempting to like control his narrative and the narrative of his country to try to like sway public opinion, specifically in America. So like, and he historically hasn't really done that in the West because he didn't really need to. I mean, obviously, if you don't include like, like political interference through like ads and shit through like the elections and stuff. Yeah. But like to have a public information war is like very out of character. So I agree with you. I think it is kind of
it reeks of
symptomatic of like, we kind of just need to get some support a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's like a strong enough leader that I think he knows like, we can kind of like pull some people.
And Americans are falling for it.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of people go like, oh, this is what a strong leader looks like. And they're trying to justify his positions. And he is elegant in his approach to things. There's a strength, but also an elegance. I'm not going to be one of these guys who goes, oh, look at this fucking idiot. He's not a baboon at all. This guy's managed to maintain control of a country of over 150 million people for decades.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
Yeah.
With staggering support amongst the population. People love him there. It's not like he's this like hated leader. There are detractors for sure, but I think the majority of the population is very happy with Putin from things that I've read.
Yeah, legitimately happy or?
Again, we don't know. But from what I understand. But yeah, it just feels like he's praying that Trump gets in there because he wants an end to this. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. When they say we're giving aid to Ukraine, I didn't realize what it really meant. We're not giving them any money.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that?
Well, they were giving them weapons, right?
We're giving us money.
What do you mean?
So Congress agrees on the aid package. Let's call it $5 billion or $10 billion. That $10 billion is not deployed to Ukraine. It's deployed to Raytheon. It's deployed to Boston Dynamics or whatever. It's deployed to Boeing. It's deployed to what we would commonly call like the military industrial complex in America. So the money isn't going there. It's going to American companies that hire Americans, that are employing Americans. Yeah. Like it continues to filter in our economy, not their economy.
And one thing we always read is war is good for the American economy.
So I wonder if there's an argument to be made, and maybe they would never, as Vivek would put it, the managerial class would never come out and say it, but I wonder if they would say like, hey, the managerial class, I wonder if their conversations are basically going, please Americans shut the fuck up. This is why we're coming out of COVID better than anybody else. We basically manufactured a war to keep the economy pumping because when these the weapons companies are building stuff, they still need steel from wherever the steel plants that we're buying from. We need things shipped. We need screws. We need paper. We need
employees to build it all.
Yeah, we need secretaries to push the paper. We need everything. These are massive companies. Now, I'm not saying that we should go to war for this reason, but I think that the way that it's being positioned by a lot of people is very simple.
It's a drain on our economy.
Yeah, here's the money in America. Instead of helping out Americans, we just give it to the Ukrainians, and now they buy soup with it.
It's like an organic stimulus check.
So the criticism would be like, well, it's just helping these wealthy companies. Those wealthy companies have people, they buy pools, right? They buy houses, they rent
which you can
apartments,
argue with, but then you're just arguing the economic policy of like trickle down or whatever.
Exactly.
Which is fine, you can argue that if you want to, you might be right, but it isn't money that's hemorrhaging from the U.S. economy and going to Ukraine.
Are you sure we're not just giving them direct money as well? I thought it's both.
I imagine that like there's a certain amount of it that needs to go there to utilize these weapons. Maybe there's getting the weapons over there is another thing. But still, like, we're probably not hiring Ukrainian companies to bring the weapons over there.
Right. Or even like food support and rations and shit for troops, like all that stuff.
Okay, so maybe there's some food and that kind of stuff, but where is the food made?
Exactly. No, to your point, like it might not only be weapons, but
it's like a stimulus, like you were saying, I think, for the American economy. I'm not saying we should do it, and I'm not saying we should be involved in these foreign wars. I would prefer that. Listen, I would love there to be some sort of agreement that stopped it completely. That being said, the way that it's being positioned by people who are opposed to it is as if the money is just leaving America and going there. And it is being funneled through American companies. It still could look like, what is it called? Like a money something scheme.
A Ponzi
pyramid scheme?
Yeah, it's almost, I don't know if it's a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme, but it's one of those situations where it's basically like they're laundering money. They're using Ukraine to launder money to themselves. But That would be the case if real weapons weren't going there, but real weapons are going there,
Yeah.
and it takes real humans to make those real weapons, and it takes real materials to make the real weapons, right? Like,
I guess I might be pro-war Ukraine.
no, I don't know. Again, I don't know. This is one of those things where we should talk to like a Vivek, you talk to like a Robert Kennedy Jr. So what do we got here?
So you got 4% is going to be, I mean, out of 75 billion, 4% is like humanitarian, emergency food, refugee support, et cetera. Financial, this is, economic support, funds, loans, and then
So
security.
that is a big, let's go, can we go up? That is a big percentage. 35% is economic support, but
Yeah.
it's economic support funds, loans, and other financial support. If it's a loan, you're going to owe me that money with interest.
Well, here's the thing about that, which is very interesting. I saw this clip. I think it was RFK talking about it, but he'd be really good to talk about this thing. So, in order to support Ukraine in this war, what I think Ukraine had to do is relinquish their rights to their natural resources. One of those resources being all these grain fields. I think they call Ukraine like the breadbasket of Europe. I think they provide more grain to the world than any other country, and they're the greatest grain producer in all of Europe. So they provide food, and that's a really valuable fucking thing. Mm-hmm. If you have 8 billion people on the planet, there's a lot of mouths to feed. You need places that can grow a lot of food, and Ukraine is one of them. So they would have to relinquish, I think they've already relinquished 30% of the rights to that, and I think they would have to relinquish all of it because we're going to have to go, I think BlackRock has to go rebuild. I think they were given the right to rebuild Ukraine once the war is over, right? Now,
I like giving the right. It wasn't a responsibility.
It's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? And how are they going to pay for that? They're going to pay for that by giving up the rights to their grain, giving up the rights
if they can't pay for it, which we know they
can't pay for it, because how would they fucking pay for it? So that's the other thing. It's like, in the most evil way of looking at this, do we push them into a war we know that they cannot win without our support, hinder them with tons of debt, and then the only way that they can get out of this debt is to relinquish the only natural resources that they have that would present them of any economic viability in the future.
Yeah.
And now we own the bread, BlackRock or whatever it is, owns the breadbasket of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, what's the
controls
alternative?
food supply. The alternative is you give up those lands to Russia before.
Exactly. So basically, Ukraine's like, okay, do we give it up to America or do we give it up to Russia?
I mean,
And do we maintain sovereignty and
then hope this gets forgiven at some point and we can get the rights back.
yeah, no, I'm not saying that they necessarily made the worst decision, but like it is, I think Americans are kind of uninformed. Myself, I know 2% of what's really going on over here, but even with what I learned recently, I'm like, oh, okay, so the money isn't really going over there. There are people potentially benefiting from here. Maybe too many wealthy companies are benefiting than average Americans, but those companies need to be serviced by average Americans. So maybe it's beneficial to us. Who knows? That's the trickle-down thing you're saying. And then also long-term, like, is America getting all them resources?
I mean, it seems like BlackRock is getting a lot of them, which is, not the best, but it's not draining from America.
Well, there's a lot of politicians making money on it too.
I'm sure. Well, you should know you can keep playing Prize Picks, even though football season's ended, and that's what we talk about the most. Basketball season, super fun. March Madness, super fun. And if you use the promo code Schultz, Prize Picks will match your initial deposit up to $100. That means you put in $100, they give you $100 for free. You got nothing to lose.